Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Click to Science's September webinar Wednesday. And looks like we have a few more people joining us, so we'll go ahead and get started with just our introductions. I am Melissa Fenton, and I am the Extension Educator and the Project Manager for Click to Science. So I do professional development, work with partners, and currently taking on more of a project management role. And today I have with me my colleague Danielle. She will be monitoring the chat pod and helping out with any technical difficulties as they arise. So today we are going to learn about the Click to Science skill supporting documentation of STEM learning, and specifically focusing on using science journals or science notebooks during STEM activities in out-of-school time programs. So we're going to brainstorm some ways to incorporate science journals into STEM programming, and then also I will be describing what staff need to do to prepare to use these science journals and sharing other resources for you. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my webcam so that it's not distracting you, but just wanted to say hello to you all. And we will get started with our first activity. So in the general chat pod, I want you to share your name, where you are from, and list 2 things that you recently took a photo of. I have on the slide here 2 things that I recently took a picture of, my 4-month-old daughter and my dog. So I'll give you a minute to share your name, where you are from, and 2 things that you recently took a photo of. So I appreciate everyone sharing, and we've got some responses about why the photos were taken. So a lot of people take photos because it's easier to just take a photo than write something down so that you have access to something when you're not at the house. Good lighting and sharing favorite song with others. I took a picture of my daughter because she was holding her head up really well and making a funny face, and my dog just looked really cute. And my colleague Danielle also takes photos of pets because they were looking really cute at the moment. And it looks like we share things with our families, a husband, or with our followers and the public on social media. I shared one picture on social media and then also shared it with some colleagues via email, and Danielle just kept the photos for herself. It looks like some people shared in the general chat pod that they sent some of the pictures as text to their family or shared them on Facebook. So the reason that we did this activity was to talk about how we each have preferences for how we document our special memories. So some of us like to share them with everybody that we have on social media. Other people sent them as text just to family members or only showed them with specific people, and some others just keep them to themselves. So an easy way to document these special memories or to capture these moments is to take photos. And then we can share these experiences with others if we choose to do so. Youth also need access to a variety of ways to document their experiences. Today we're going to specifically focus on science journals, although there are many other ways for you to document their learning, such as taking photos or videos. So this introductory activity that we just did here virtually as a group was taken from the Click to Science training resource, 2 Wheels Are Better Than One, which is available to download in the Files pod, which is in the bottom right of the screen. So you'll see at the top there's a document titled 2 Wheels Are Easier Than One Training Guide. So feel free to download that training resource if you would like to do an activity like this and teach your staff about supporting documentation of STEM learning. So what are the benefits of using science journals in out-of-school time? Science journals encourage youth to collect data and make sense of it. They act as a record of learning and youth sense-making during STEM learning experiences. They provide time for individual reflection. Journals can include writing, drawing, graphing, charting, and diagramming results of their scientific investigations, which encourages youth to document what they are learning in a variety of ways. Science journals enhance literacy skills and support differentiated learning. Youth are writing questions about their observations, predictions, and conclusions in their notebooks, helping them develop their communication skills. Since journals are for individual youth to use to make sense of what they are learning, they allow for youth of mixed ages and ability levels to participate in and benefit from the same learning experience. So there are a lot of benefits to using science journals in out-of-school time. If you can think of any benefits that you want to share with the group, feel free to share those in the chat pod. I also want to draw your attention to the web links pod, which is the pod that is right above the files to download pod in the bottom right of the screen. There is a link titled 5 Reasons for Science Notebooks. This refers to the formal school day, but their reasons are also compelling for out-of-school time. So if you want a good article that talks about all the benefits to using science notebooks or science journals, try to click that link and take a peek at that article. So how can you get started using science journals or science notebooks in your program? Well, first, knowing that there are 2 types of journals is a good way to get started. So we have the structured journal, like the sample science journal in the file pod. So once again, draw your attention, there's a youth science journal file in the files to download pod, and that's our sample science journal that is available from the Click to Science resources. And then notebooks. So structured journals are inexpensive, easy to replace if they are lost, and you can use one per learning experience. The disadvantage of these structured journals is that there isn't the open interpretation and sometimes the deep thinking that can occur when youth are using a blank notebook to draw and record observations and data. However, spiral bound notebooks or bound notebooks with blank pages make it easy for you to refer to prior learning experiences and make it easier to see their growth over time. These notebooks take a long time to develop as you have to set them up with youth and model using the notebooks, and you have to remember to build in time to use them during every STEM learning experience to really see that growth and development over time. So depending on what will work best in your program, there are suggestions for setting up and organizing science journals on both the California Academy of Sciences site and the Foss website. So links to both sites are in the web links pod, and if you are interested in getting this set up, please check out these 2 resources that we have found for you. So I'm checking the link on the Foss site, and it looks like it is also not opening for me. Your staff using science journals with some kindergartners. So while we watch the video, I want you to pay special attention to the strategies staff are using to encourage the youth to document their observations, and then how staff may have prepared to use science journals. So you'll see in the video different strategies that staff are using to encourage youth to document their observations, and also how staff are prepared to use science journals. So I'm going to go ahead and get that video pulled up here, and if you have any problems with it playing, please comment on that in the chat pod. We will also share a link to this video so that you can watch it side by side in your own web browser if you have problems accessing it.
How can we use these journals? What do we do with these journals? Why do we want to put our memories in here?
Because you want to remember what you saw at the zoo.
You want to remember the things that we've recorded?
A critical practice of science and engineering is communicating observations either verbally or in written form. Keeping a notebook or scientific journal is an essential tool to help youth process ideas and present information to others. Watch as kindergartners use journals to make observations and share findings. How could you incorporate a scientific journal into your STEM program, or on your next field trip to help youth record their observations in a unique space?
Hey, look at the tapir's nose. What shape could the tapir's nose be?
I did this. Cylinder.
Cylinder. Can you tally the tapir's nose? I would like you to mark in your journals how many circles you see, triangles you see. All right, let's say hi to our friends over here.
Hi, Monkey.
Yeah.
Hi,
What shapes do you see?
I see a big fat body.
Up there, all those rectangles? That's quite a bit. Joey, how many do you estimate is up there? Hundreds? That's a good estimation. A square over there? Tally them up on there. So if you were to open your journal and reflect, could you remember what we did, what activity we did when we were looking for these shapes?
Yes, I do.
What were these?
What do you see the fish doing?
Were you just making observations about the fish and then charting it?
A couple more chat pods. You'll see one called strategies and then also one called preparation. And in each of those chat pods, please type in the strategies that you saw the staff member using to encourage you to document their observations in their journals. And in the preparation chat pods and move on, we are going to talk about how you can prepare for using science journals in out of school time. So first you would want to decide on the type of journal you want to use. We talked about either the structured science journal, we have an example of that in the files to download pod, as well as a blank science notebook. So if you do decide to use blank notebooks, you will need to spend some time with youth numbering the pages, creating a table of contents, similar to the one that I have here on my slide, and discussing what the entries will look like. And that is going to depend a lot on the age range of your students. On the Foss website, they have it broken up by K through 2, 3 through 5, and then middle school, which is really helpful to see what kind of things you can do with those different age groups. You know, obviously with kindergarten through second graders, you're probably going to do a lot of leading and a lot of prompting and a lot of setting expectations. With those older groups, you may be able to do a little bit less of that, but you're still going to have to, you know, go through the setup of the notebook with all of the different groups. So, for example, when you're setting up what the entries will look like, if you're going to be using science journals during a field trip, titling those entries with the location or what they were observing could be helpful with reflection later, or if you're going to talk about what you saw. Staff will also have to support youth in developing their notebooks. So the suggestions I read were that you could start with a group notebook, either using flip chart paper or poster board, and provide the youth that you're working with a reference as they begin recording their learning experiences. So maybe do the first time that you're going to do use science journals as part of the STEM learning experience, maybe do a group notebook together so that you all are setting shared expectations about what that's going to look like. You know, everyone's being a part of recording the observations. And then they also learn how the process should look when they start doing it on their own. Other recommendations were for staff to talk aloud about what the group is putting into their notebooks, making sure to not tell them what to write, but just helping to structure their thoughts and keep them focused on documenting their observations or the data that they have collected. The most important and often most difficult in after school or out of school time is making sure that you build in that time to record and to reflect. So many times we are in a rush to get our activity done, or we only have 30 minutes and we're trying to do, something really cool with the youth and want them to, explore and learn. So it's building in, making sure that we build in that time to record during each of the processes that could give us some trouble. So if you're going to use the structured science journal for an activity, you would just need to stop at each point in the scientific process for you to write about and or draw what they have done. While this does add time to the activity, you could extend that activity over a couple of days if you're going to have the same youth 2 days in a row. Or you could also use science journals with activities that take shorter amounts of time to do. So if you have an activity that takes 15 minutes, you can plan for 15 minutes of going through each of the steps to record and draw what's happening during that activity. The California Academy of Sciences provides some lesson plans around setting up science notebooks. These are geared toward a classroom setting. However, you could do a similar activity in your program if you plan to use science notebooks regularly, or you're going to start implementing some STEM programming, and part of that is using a science notebook or a science journal. You could just set that up at the beginning of the year and then use them during all of the STEM activities as part of the expectations of what youth will do in those. So the lesson plan is available from the web links pod, and it's also in the files to download pod. So in the web links, it's organizing notebooks lesson, and then the files to download is a PDF called setting up your notebook lesson plan. So Foss recommends that each notebook have some components to direct the use of the notebooks and really make them useful for youth to go back and reflect on what they've learned and process and do that sense making of what they're observing and learning during those STEM learning experiences. So they've organized some helpful ideas and suggestions for getting started by grade level on their website. And Danielle had posted a link. It appears the link in the web resources isn't working real well, so she posted one in the chat pod. So just scroll up to that, and then you should be able to click on the link that Danielle DeWeese shared, and it should take you to the FOSS website so you can access that information. So I'm going to summarize some of the recommendations for the different sections Science Notebook should have and kind of provide my take on what they shared. So they recommend having a planning the investigation section where youth would document whatever the focus question or the question that they're trying to answer through their investigation is located to kind of start out, frame the whole process of what they're doing and documenting in their science journals. So for example, what is in the soil at our program or at our school or at the child care center? So having that big overarching question and then talking through what they're going to do to answer that question. So these could be narrative plans where they're writing about it just in kind of a conversational style, or the step-by-step procedures of an experiment that you're going to do to find out the answer to this question. So this may need to be something that you help them with, filling out the step-by-step procedures, or you could have a printout or a chart in the front of the room or something that they've already got in their notebook that they can just kind of document loosely what you're doing with the steps of the experiment already in there. And then youth want to record their predictions, so what they think will happen after they do this experiment to test and find out the answer to their question. So the next section would be the data acquisition and organization. They recommend that youth use drawings, writing, tables, graphs, charts, and graphics to showcase the data that they have collected. They should be organized in this section into something that makes sense to youth and also for the investigation that they're doing. So if they're going to be, counting something, having a graph that shows, how many they counted each different time or with each different condition would be helpful. Maybe not using a graph that's not going to help showcase that as part of that data collection. So that'll also take some guiding on your behalf. And Click to Science does have some great resources in our supporting documentation of STEM learning skill that talk about how to decide between different data collection methods and different ways of looking at data. So they have a great training resource and a meeting resource that talks about how to use a Venn diagram, how to also use a scatter plot and chart different data, and how to decide between the two when you're going to be planning a STEM activity that could be helpful if you're going to have staff implementing science journals and being in charge of kind of deciding the strategies that youth are going to use to document their data collection. And then they recommend having a section called Making Sense of the Data. And so this is where youth are really going to process what they have learned as part of that science investigation. So these can be group discussions or individual reflection time. You could prompt the whole group to discuss what they found, to really help youth make sense of what they discovered during their investigation, and also hear what their peers found while they were doing their investigations as well. You could also provide individual reflection and sense-making time with question prompts that you'd answer in their notebooks. So you can either have statements where they fill in the blanks, or you can just have questions where you want them to write the answers in their notebooks to help them really process. So that's another strategy and related to the Click to Science skill of reflecting and processing STEM learning experiences, giving them time to really make sense of what they are learning and also what they've observed as part of that learning experience. And then my favorite are the I wonder statements. And so these are things that youth want to know the answer to and can put this in the back of their science journal. So maybe the investigation prompted some new questions to investigate or new ideas that youth are thinking about. And by looking at these statements or sharing them as a group, it's a great way to get new ideas for STEM activities and also give youth a voice in what they learn. So maybe you make a habit out of every STEM activity that at the end we share our I wonder statements, and then that helps you do your lesson planning for the next week or the next 2 weeks based on what youth are interested in. So I had some ideas based on, some short STEM learning activities that I had found that didn't really seem to fit in as part of a module series or wasn't part of a curriculum, how to make that into a longer series of activities and give it some meaning. The I wonder statements could really do that. And then you're also giving youth a voice in what they're learning and their programming, if that's something that you have the capability to do it in your program. So now that we've talked a little bit about, what the benefits of science journals are, how to prepare and structure blank science journals, and watched them used in action, I want to give you a chance to brainstorm some ways that science journals can be incorporated into your programs. So I'm going to open a new chat pod titled Brainstorming. And I want you to share any ideas that you have that were prompted by this webinar, or that you even thought of as you were signing up for it. You said, I'm interested in using science journals in my program. I'm looking for more resources and different ideas of how to use this. But, as part of watching the videos and listening to the content, I've had these ideas. So we want you to share those in that chat pod, as well as if you have ways that you've used science journals in the past. We encourage you to share those in that brainstorming section as well. So I'll give you just a little bit of time to type out your ideas. I'm going to address Jessica's because I actually have some ideas for that. I recently judged our robotics area at the Nebraska State Fair. So we just finished that up on Labor Day, and State Fair is a big project here in Nebraska, and the Click to Science project is part of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and then we partner with Nebraska 4-H through Nebraska Extension. So both Danielle and I had some responsibilities with helping for the fair. Danielle definitely more than I did, but I judged robotics nevertheless. And they do a portfolio that they enter into the fair, and so I was able to see their progression. They documented the meetings that they had where they planned things out. They wrote down everything that they tested and if it worked or didn't work. They wrote down their different designs and how they decided on the design that they were going to do for their competition. And so this was part of the different competitive robotics programs, but it would be really great to start this portfolio or a notebook where everybody's contributing all of their ideas, and then you put it together so that you've got this documented process of look at how we started, and then we came to this robot, and here's how we made all those decisions along the way. So that's, I think, a great idea. And Valerie, I definitely agree with you. It is the opportunity to work like a true scientist, and I think it reinforces that, a scientist isn't just someone in a lab who's doing experiments, the mad scientist in the lab coat type of idea that we all have. It's someone who's going out, observing things, collecting data, writing their data down, and then drawing conclusions from that. And so that could be a simple, a trip to the zoo, as we had in our video, where they're looking at the different shapes that are present in the different exhibits, and also looking at the animals and what, the nose of a tapir is shaped like, and documenting that. It could be any kind of outside just investigations that you have. Maybe you're going to walk around and see if you can identify all the different insects that are present on the playground at the school that you're at, or you're going to look at the different plants and see if you can find the similarities between different types of grasses, or, there's all kinds of things that you can do where it's not just, sitting down and doing an activity. You get to go outside, or you get to explore, or, you can sit down and do an activity and then document it through. And an idea that I had while we were doing this brainstorming is what a great way to show parents and other community members that youth are learning in after school, that this isn't just a daycare or a babysitting time, that this is meaningful learning taking place, and that you all are facilitating that, and why it's so important that we have quality staff and out of school time. So I think making the case also is showing that, this is what youth are doing throughout the year in these journals. Look at the growth that this has shown, sharing that with parents, sharing that with different people in the community who, may not know that is a great idea also to use with science journals. So that is all of the content I prepared today. It's a shorter webinar, but I thought the California Academy of Sciences notebook guides really had some good information for you. And then also the Foss Science Notebook site had some great information as well. And so had I been going through all of that content and delivering all that, we would have been here for 2 hours. But I thought I'd summarize it for you, and then the things that you specifically need for your program, you could go into and look at. So I'm going to go ahead and hide our brainstorming pod, and then I have some announcements for you. So we are going to have our next webinar on October 19th, and our focus will be on creating a safe space. This October is very busy for us with conferences. We are going to be presenting 5 sessions at the Kansas Out of School Time Conference on October 4th. We're going to be exhibiting at the National Association of Extension and 4-H Agents National Conference in New Orleans from October 9th through the 13th, presenting 2 sessions at the 2016 Florida After School Conference October 12th, and presenting 2 sessions at the Wyoming After School Alliance Conference on October 17th. We also have a conference coming up in Nebraska on September 23rd, and we'll be presenting some sessions there as well. So if you happen to be at any of these conferences, we really look forward to seeing you there. If you are not registered for Click to Science, please go ahead and do so that you can have access to the free professional development resources that I referenced in this webinar, as well as that sample use science journal. That's something that's available on our site, and you have to be a registered user to download. Also, please take some time to complete the survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar. Your feedback is important to us, and we use it for planning future webinar Wednesdays. So if there are no additional questions, I will go ahead and close this down and send you to the survey. So have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you soon.